Captain Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of his ship, New Seoul, and watched the stars through the main screen. His crew of 50 humans had been exploring this part of space for 3 months now. They were mapping new worlds and looking for places where humans could build colonies someday. The work was peaceful and quiet exactly how Tae-ho liked. Ive was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. Back on Earth, his wife Jinna always said he worried too much about his crew. But that was what made him a good captain. He knew every person on his ship by name. He knew their families, their dreams, their fears. Today he was thinking about going home soon. His daughter, the Jin, would be starting school next month, and he wanted to be there. The alarm started screaming. Without warning, red lights flashed across the bridge, and crew members ran to their stations. Communications officer Lee So-young turned from her console with fear in her eyes. "Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching fast," she said. Her voice was steady, but Tae-ho could hear the worry underneath. "They are big, sir, really big on?" The main screen space seemed to tear open like fabric. Dark shapes poured through the holes. In reality, these were not human ships. They were huge and black, with strange angles that hurt to look at. The alien vessels moved in ways that made no sense, sliding through space like living things. How many? Tae-ho asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 15 ships. Sir So-young replied, "They are surrounding us. There is no way out." Engineer Park Min-soo looked up from his station. "Sir, I am reading energy signatures I have never seen before. These ships are more advanced than anything we have. The power levels are off the charts." Tae-ho felt his stomach drop, but he kept his face calm. His crew was looking at him, waiting for orders. They trusted him to keep them safe. He had never let them down before, but this time might be different. "Open a channel," he said. "Let me talk to Thim." So-young worked at her console for a moment, then shook her head. "Sir, they are not responding to any of our signals." "Wait, something is happening." The alien ships moved closer. Their hulls were covered in strange markings that seemed to glow and shift. As they approached, the human ship began to shake. Energy beams reached out from the alien vessels and grabbed the New Seoul like invisible hands. "We are caught in some kind of tractor beam," Min-soo reported. "Power systems are failing. I cannot break us free." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the inside of an alien ship. The beings they saw made several crew members gasp in fear. The aliens were tall and gray, with too many arms. Their skin looked like wet stone, and their eyes glowed red like coals from a fire. When they moved, it was wrong, somehow like they were not used to having bought. As one of the aliens stepped forward, it wore what might have been a uniform covered in sharp metal pieces. When it spoke, the words came through their translation system in a voice like grinding rocks. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. Your species is unknown to us, but that will change. We are the Vorthan Empire, and we claim this sector of space. You have no rights." Tae-ho stepped forward, even though every instinct told him to run. "I am Captain Kim Tae-ho of the Earthship New Seoul. We are explorers, not soldiers. We mean no harm to anyone." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You will learn what harm means soon enough, Captain Kim. Human minds are weak. Your bodies are soft. We will take what we need from you and dispose of the rest." The transmission ended, and the alien ships opened fire. Energy beams hit the New Seoul from all sides. The ship shook like a toy, and a stormhole breaches opened in 3 sections, and the lights went out. Emergency power came on, painting everything in red. "Damage report." Tae-ho called out. "Life support is failing." Min-soo shouted over the noise of alarms. "We have maybe 10 minutes of air left. Hull integrity is down to 30%. If they hit us again, we are dead." Tae-ho looked around at his crew. These were good people who trusted him to bring them home safely. He thought about Jinna waiting for him on Earth, about the Jin starting school, about all the families who would never see their loved ones again. If he made the wrong choice, all hands prepare to surrender, he said into the ship-wide communication system. "I am sorry." The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but he had no choice. The alien ships were too powerful. The New Seoul was dying around them. Surrender was the only way to keep his crew alive, even if he did not know what the aliens would do to them within minutes. Alien soldiers appeared on the ship. They moved through the corridors like ghosts passing through walls. The humans tried to resist, but their weapons did nothing against alien armor. The soldiers carried devices that shot nets of energy. The nets wrapped around humans and burned their skin, but did not kill them. Tae-ho watched helplessly as his crew was dragged away. Park Min-soo fought 3 aliens before they caught him. Lee So-young tried to destroy her console to protect their navigation data, but an alien stopped her. Dr. Choi Hae-jin, the ship medical officer, helped wounded crew members until the aliens took her to the aliens separated the humans immediately. They put each person in a different ship. Tae-ho found himself in a small cell with only Dr. Hae-jin. The walls were smooth and gray with no windows or doors that he could see. Lights came from somewhere in the ceiling but cast no shadow. Hae-jin was a small woman with intelligent eyes and steady hands. She had saved many lives during their mission, treating everything from broken bones to space sickness. Now she sat quietly in the corner of their cell, checking her own injuries. "Are you hurt?" Tae-ho asked. "Nothing serious," she replied. "I am more worried about the others. The aliens separated us for a reason. They want to question us alone where we cannot support each other." Before Tae-ho could answer, part of the wall disappeared. An alien walked through the opening. This one was different from the soldiers it wore. A long robe covered in symbols and carried devices that hummed with energy. Behind it came more aliens with scanning equipment. "I am Commander Zethkar," the alien said. Its voice was like metal scraping against stone. "You are the leaders of your little ship. You will tell us everything about your species, where you come from, how many worlds you control, what weapons you have, military secrets, the locations of your colonies." The alien moved closer. Its red eyes seemed to look right through them. "Your minds are simple compared to ours. We have broken thousands of species before you. None have lasted more than a few hours under our questioning. You will tell us what we want to know." Ho stood up slowly. His legs shook, but he kept his back straight. "I am Captain Kim Tae-ho of the Earth Alliance. We are explorers, not soldiers. We have no military secrets to give you." Zethkar made that grinding sound again. "Oh, but you do, Captain. Every species has secrets, and we have ways of finding them. Our torture chambers have never failed. The mind always breaks before the body dies." The alien gestured to its followers, and they brought forward strange devices that looked like a cross between medical equipment and weapons. The machines hummed with power that made the air itself feel heavy. "You will be our first human subjects," the alien continued. "We are curious to see how long your species can endure pain before the mind shatters. Most aliens last 3 to 4 hours. The strongest we have encountered lasted 2 days. You look weak. I expect you will break much sooner." Jin stood up beside Tae-ho. She was small compared to the aliens, but her voice was clear and strong. "We will tell you nothing." The aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. "Very well, we will see how brave you are when the pain begins. Take them to the preparation chambers." More aliens appeared and grabbed the humans with their many arms. The grip burned like fire, but neither Tae-ho nor Hae-jin made a sound. They were dragged through corridors filled with the screams of other captured beings from different worlds. The sounds echoed off the walls like the voices of the damned as they were pulled toward their fate. Tae-ho thought about his grandfather who had survived the war. The old man had told him stories about enduring pain and staying strong for others. He thought about Jinnah and the Jinn waiting for him at home. He thought about his crew depending on him to be strong. The aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. Humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that lasted decades. They had built civilizations from the ashes of destroyed worlds. They had learned to find hope in the darkest places. The Vorthans thought pain was power, but they had never met a species that had learned to embrace suffering and transform it into strength. They were about to discover that some things in the universe could not be broken, no matter how much force was applied. The torture chambers waited ahead. But Tae-ho was not afraid anymore. He had found something worth protecting, something worth dying for, if necessary. His crew, his family, his entire species depended on him staying strong. The aliens would learn that humans were different. They would learn that silence could be more powerful than screams. They would learn that some minds could not be broken, only tempered like steel in a forge. But that lesson would come later. For now, there was only the long walk toward pain and the quiet determination to endure whatever came next without giving the enemy what they wanted. The real battle was about to begin. The torture chamber was a white room that hurt to look at. Everything was too bright and too clean, like a hospital where terrible things happened. The walls curved in impossible ways that made human eyes water when they tried to follow the lines. Strange machines hung from the ceiling like metal spiders waiting to drop down on their prey. Captain Kim Tae-ho found himself floating in the middle of the room. held by invisible forces that gripped his arms and legs. He could not move, could not fall, could not even turn his head. The restraint field felt like being wrapped in electricity that never quite shocked him but promised it could at any moment. Dr. Choi Hyjin was in a similar chamber next door, separated by a wall of clear material that let them see each other but not speak. She floated in her own invisible prison, surrounded by alien devices that hummed with waiting power. Her face was calm, but Taeho could see the worry in her eyes. Commander Zethkar stood between the two chambers, his forearms moving over control panels covered in symbols that shifted and changed. The alien technicians worked quietly around him, checking their equipment and preparing for what they called gentle persuasion. Your species has never experienced Vorthan interrogation methods, Zethkar said, his voice echoing in both chambers. We have perfected these techniques over thousands of years. No mind can resist them for long. The pain starts slowly, then builds until consciousness itself becomes unbearable. One of the technicians, a smaller alien with extra eyes growing from its neck, looked up from its instruments. Sir, the neural scanners are calibrated for human brain patterns. We can begin whenever you give the order. Taeho tried to speak but found that the restraint field had locked his jaw shut. He could only listen and watch as the aliens prepared to tear information from his mind. He thought about his daughter, the Jinn playing in their garden back on Earth. She would be picking flowers, now getting ready for school. Her small hands would be dirty from digging in the soil looking for interesting rocks. The first wave of pain hit like lightning, running through every nerve in his body. It started at his fingertips and toes, then raced toward his heart and brain. The sensation was like being burned and frozen at the same time, while needles pushed through his skin from the inside. The alien technicians watched their screens with professional interest, measuring human responses to calculated torture. The readings showed Taeho heart rate, blood pressure, brain activity, everything his body was doing as it tried to cope with artificial agony. But something was wrong with their readings. The human showed all the signs of extreme pain, but his mind remained strangely organized instead of dissolving into chaos like other species did. The brain patterns were unlike anything in their databases. Increase the intensity. Zethkar ordered. The pain doubled, then doubled again. Taeho felt like his bones were melting while his muscles turned to fire. He wanted to scream, wanted to beg for mercy, wanted to tell them anything they wanted to know just to make it stop. But instead he forced his mind to go to a quiet place his grandfather had taught him about long ago. His grandfather had been a tough old man who survived the war and lived through things that would break most people. He used to tell young Taeho stories about enduring hardship, about finding strength in the darkest moments, about how the mind could go somewhere safe even when the body was suffering. Think of something beautiful, the old man had said. Something that belongs only to you, something they can never take away no matter what they do to your body. Taeho thought about Jinnah, his wife, reading bedtime stories to the Jinn. The sound of her voice was like music floating through their small house on quiet evenings. He could almost hear her now, telling their daughter about brave heroes who never gave up no matter how hard things became. In the next chamber, Hyjin was experiencing her own version of hell. The alien torture devices sent waves of agony through her nervous system, trying to shatter her mind and force her to reveal human secrets. But she had her own memories to protect her. She remembered her medical training, the long hours spent learning to help people who were hurt or sick. She thought about every patient she had ever saved, every life that had been placed in her hands. She remembered the oath she had taken to help others, no matter what it cost her personally. The pain was terrible, but she had seen worse things. She had watched people die despite her best efforts, had held the hands of patients who would never go home to their families, had worked through disasters and emergencies that would give most people nightmares. Pain was something she understood, something she could work with. Alien technicians were becoming confused. Their instruments showed both humans were experiencing maximum agony, but neither subject was breaking down the way they should. The brain patterns remained stable, almost eerily calm beneath the surface. Torture this is impossible, the lead technician reported to Zethkar. The readings indicate they are suffering, but their minds are not fragmenting. They should be begging for mercy by now. Zethkar moved closer to Taeho chamber, his red eyes studying the human face, twisted with pain but still defiant. There was something in those human eyes that the alien commander had never seen before. In thousands of interrogations, a kind of quiet strength that seemed to grow stronger under pressure. Instead of weaker increased power to maximum levels, he ordered Sir the technician. Warned that is beyond safe parameters for most species, the shock could cause permanent brain damage or death due it anyway. Zethkar snarled, these humans will break like all the others. The machines wind as energy levels climbed far beyond what they had ever used before. Warning lights flashed throughout the torture facility and backup systems activated to handle the massive power drain. The very air seemed to vibrate with deadly force. Enhanced torture sent lightning through human veins. Teho body convulsed against the restraints as electricity coursed through every cell. His vision went white, then black, then white again as his nervous system overloaded. But somewhere deep in his mind he held on to the image of his family. Could see the Jinn running through their garden chasing butterflies. Her laughter echoed in his thoughts, drowning out the sound of alien machines he could feel. Jinnah, hand in his warm and gentle and real, even though she was light years away. The love he felt for them was stronger than any pain the aliens could. Kriti Hyjin found her own source of strength in the faces of patients. She had saved a little boy with a broken arm who smiled at her through his tears, an old woman who thanked her for making the pain go away, a young father who lived because she refused to give up during a complicated surgery. Each memory was like armor against the alien torture. The devices could hurt her body, but they could not touch the part of her that had dedicated itself to helping others. That part was pure and untouchable, no matter what the Vorthans did to her past. The torture continued at levels that should have killed both humans, but they remained conscious and silent. Their bodies showed the brutal effects of alien technology. Burns covered their skin, muscles trembled from neural overload. Blood vessels burst under the pressure, yet their eyes remained clear and determined. Neither human made a sound beyond controlled breathing. No screams, no pleas, no offers to cooperate. The silence was more unsettling to their captors than any amount of screaming would have been. The alien technicians began to show signs of stress. Operating torture devices for this long at maximum power was exhausting. They had to monitor the feedback from human minds, and the experience was unlike anything they had encountered before. These human thoughts were dense and layered with emotions and memories that Vorthan minds found difficult to process. The aliens were used to interrogating species that broke quickly, whose minds became simple and readable under torture, but human consciousness seemed to become more complex and resistant under pressure. Sir, one of the technicians reported, his voice shaking, we are detecting unusual feedback patterns. The human neural activity is affecting our scanning systems. The readings are unstable. Zethkar ignored the warning and ordered the torture to continue. He had invested too much in this interrogation to stop now. The humans would break eventually. Everyone broke under enough pressure. This was a law of the universe as reliable as gravity. But as the hours dragged on, it became clear that something unprecedented was happening. The humans were not just resisting torture, they were somehow turning it into a source of inner strength. Their silence was becoming a weapon that cut deeper than any blade. The alien commander watched his instruments with growing unease. The readings made no sense according to everything his species knew about interrogation and psychology. These humans were rewriting the rules simply by refusing to follow them. In both chambers, the humans floated in their restraint fields, bloodied and burned but unbroken. Their silence filled the white rooms like a living thing challenging everything. The Vorthan Empire believed about power and weakness. The first session was ending, but the real battle was just beginning. The aliens had expected quick victory. Instead, they had encountered something that would haunt their dreams. The sound of human silence was louder than any scream. 3 days passed, and the torture chambers never stopped their deadly work. Captain Kim Tae-ho and Dr. Choi Hai-jin remained conscious, though their bodies showed the brutal effects of alien technology. Burns covered every inch of their skin. Their muscles trembled constantly from neural overload. Blood vessels had burst under the pressure, leaving dark marks across their faces. But their eyes still burned with unbroken spirit. They breathed slowly and steadily, never crying out, never begging for mercy, never offering to give the aliens what they wanted. The silence in the white chambers had become thick and heavy, like a living thing that watched and waited. Commander Zethkar paced between the two rooms, his confidence cracking like ice. Under pressure, he had interrogated thousands of beings from dozens of different worlds. Every species had broken within hours or at most a few days. These humans were breaking all the rules of psychology and biology. The alien technicians were suffering. Two operating torture devices at maximum power for days was taking its toll on their minds. They had to monitor feedback from human consciousness, and the experience was unlike anything they had trained for. Human thoughts were too intense, too layered. With emotions that Vorthan minds could not understand, technician Velthara, who monitored the neural scanning systems, developed tremors in her 4 manipulator arms. She kept experiencing flashes of human memories, brief glimpses into minds that held decades of struggle and survival. These alien thoughts felt raw and powerful in ways that made her own consciousness feel weak and simple, sir. She reported to Zethkar, her voice shaking. Something is wrong with the feedback systems. The human thoughts are too strong. They are affecting our equipment and our personnel. I am having trouble maintaining mental stability. Zethkar dismissed her concerns with an angry gesture. Continue the interrogation, he ordered. These humans will break like all the others. Everyone breaks under enough pressure. This is a universal law. But the fresh technicians who replaced Velthara fared even worse. The human capacity for silent endurance seemed to create psychic pressure that built up in the scanning systems. Vorthan minds that were used to quick surrender under pain could not process feedback from consciousness that refused to yield. Technician Morpak was monitoring Hyjin torture session when it happened. He was watching the readings when suddenly human thoughts flooded into his mind through the neural interface. The medical officer memories of helping others, of sacrificing for the greater good, of healing pain instead of causing it, overwhelmed his alien consciousness. He began screaming uncontrollably, his mind shattered by reflected human determination. The thoughts were too alien, too powerful for his psychology to handle. Other technicians tried to help him, but he kept shrieking about human voices that would not leave his head. Breakdown spread through the facility like a disease. Other Vorthans who had been exposed to human mental patterns began experiencing similar episodes. Their own psychological defenses, built around the assumption that pain leads to surrender, crumbled. When faced with minds that had evolved differently, security guards reported strange dreams filled with human memories. Maintenance workers found themselves unable to enter the torture chambers without feeling overwhelming emotions they could not identify. Even Zethkar began to experience headaches and moments of confusion as human thoughts leaked through the scanning system, sir. The facility medical officer reported to the commander, "We have 17 personnel in psychiatric care and more showing symptoms every hour. The human mental patterns are creating some kind of psychic contamination. Our people cannot handle exposure to these alien thought processes." Zethkar ordered the torture to continue, but his own hands were shaking. Now he found himself avoiding direct eye contact with the human prisoners. Their calm acceptance of suffering was more terrifying than any weapon he had ever faced. Dr. Ketmar, the chief scientist of the Vorthan Empire, arrived at the torture facility to investigate the spreading mental contamination. She was the Empire's greatest expert on alien psychology, and she had never seen anything like the reports coming from the interrogation chambers. She found her research facility in chaos. Technicians huddled in corners, muttering about human thoughts that haunted their dreams. The torture devices sat unused while Vorthan personnel recovered from psychological trauma that made no sense according to their science. How is this possible? She demanded while reviewing the data logs. The human subjects showed clear signs of physical damage from the torture, yet their mental resilience remained completely intact. More disturbing, their silence seemed to be having an active psychological effect on Vorthan minds. The readings defied everything known about interrogation and consciousness. Most species became more fragmented and readable under extreme pain, but human minds seemed to become more organized and focused. The worse the torture became, the stronger their mental defenses. Gru Ketmar decided to attempt direct mental contact using the most advanced neural interface available. She would connect her consciousness directly to the human captain mind and discover what made these beings so resistant to proven interrogation methods. She entered Teho chamber where the human floated in his restraint field. His body was broken and burned, but his eyes were still clear and watchful. When he saw her approach, something that might have been a smile crossed his damaged Face, I am going to look inside your mind, human, he said through the translation device. I will find your secrets and your weaknesses. Nothing can hide from Vorthan science. Do what you must. Teho replied quietly, but his voice carried no fear, only a strange kind of pity that made the alien scientist uncomfortable. Mar activated the neural interface and connected her consciousness directly to the human mind. She expected to find the usual chaos of a torture victim. Instead, she encountered something that shook her. To her very core, human consciousness was layered in ways that Vorthan science had never documented. Beneath the surface, Painteho mind held vast networks of memory, duty, and love that formed an unbreachable foundation. She saw flashes of human history of countless individuals who had endured suffering for principles greater than themselves. She witnessed the memory of Teho grandfather surviving war and occupation camps. She saw Jinnah waiting faithfully at home, never doubting that her husband would return. She experienced Dajin innocent laughter echoing through a small house on Earth. These connections were not just memories, they were living sources of strength that grew more powerful under pressure. The mental contact lasted only seconds before Ketmar tore herself away, gasping and shaking. The human mind was not weak, as the Vorthans had assumed. It was dense, complex, and hardened by evolutionary pressures. Her species had never faced humans, did not break under torture, because they had been shaped by millennia of surviving things worse than anything the Vorthans could imagine. Commander, she reported to Zethkar with obvious terror in her voice, we must stop this immediately. The human minds are not compatible with our interrogation methods. They are causing cascade failures in our personnel. These beings are psychologically unlike anything we have ever encountered. Zethkar refused to accept her findings. He had committed too much to this interrogation to abandon it now. His career and reputation depended on breaking these humans. The torture would continue no matter what the cost to his own people, but word was already spreading through the Vorthan fleet. The humans who remained silent under torture were becoming legends among the alien crews. Some Vorthans began to question whether their empire had chosen the right enemy to fight. Others wondered what kind of species could endure such suffering without breaking. The real battle was no longer taking place in the torture chambers. It was happening in the minds of every Vorthan who learned about the silent humans who refused to scream. On the seventh day, Commander Zethkar entered the torture chamber, personally carrying the most powerful neural disruptors in the Vorthan arsenal. If automated torture could not break the humans, then direct personal attention would have to succeed. His reputation and his life depended on it. Captain Kim Tae-ho hung in his restraint field, more dead than alive. His body had been pushed far beyond what any being should be able to endure. Every cell screamed with agony, but his mind remained clear and focused. When he saw Zethkar approach with the new devices, he actually smiled. Your silence ends today, human. Zethkar snarled, activating neural disruptors that sent liquid fire through every nerve in the human body. I will tear the information from your mind piece by piece until nothing remains but broken memories. Ho looked directly into the alien commander, glowing red eyes. The smile never left his face despite the incredible pain coursing through his system. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a man who had found something worth dying for and knew his enemy could never understand it. You know nothing about pain, he said, quietly speaking. Clearly, despite the torture devices working at maximum power, you know nothing about strength, you torture bodies, because you cannot imagine minds that will not surrender. Zethkar increased the device power to levels that should have stopped a human heart instantly, but Teho continued speaking, his voice growing stronger instead of weaker. My people have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that lasted generations. We have built civilizations from ashes and found hope in darkness. The neural disruptor reached energy levels that violated every safety protocol in Vorthan science, yet the human remained conscious. His body was breaking down at the cellular level, but his mind burned with defiant clarity that seemed to grow brighter under pressure. Your empire thinks pain is power, Teho continued, but you have never learned to endure it. You break others because you yourselves are broken inside. You fear silence because your own thoughts are too weak to survive it. The sheer impossibility of what he was witnessing began to affect Zethkar's own psychological stability. The commander had built his entire identity around the belief that sufficient Pain could break any mind. Now he was faced with consciousness that seemed to transform suffering into strength. This is not possible, Zethkar whispered, watching. His instruments register readings that made no scientific sense. The human should be dead or completely insane, yet he continued to resist with increasing intensity. The chamber next door, Dr. Haijin, had reached a similar state of transcendent endurance. Her torturer, Subcommander Velmoth, was experiencing his own breakdown as the human medical officer began reciting the names of every patient she had ever saved. Each name was spoken clearly, despite the torture devices working at lethal levels. Park Jin-ho with the broken ribs, who thanked her for making the pain stop. Lee Min-young, the pregnant woman whose baby she delivered during an emergency. Kim Dong-woo, the elderly man who lived because she refused to give up during surgery. The litany of life preserved through dedication and sacrifice proved more powerful than any weapon. The Vorthan officer found his own mind cracking under the weight of human compassion that remained strong even under ultimate torture. Then both humans began to sing, not screaming or pleading, but singing an old Korean folk song about endurance through hardship. Their voices, damaged by days of torture, still carried the melody clearly through the facility. The song spoke of mountains that never moved and rivers that always found the sea. The sound triggered mass psychological collapse among the Vorthan personnel. Alien minds that had never encountered such pure, concentrated will simply could not process it. The song represented something beyond their understanding, the ability to find beauty and meaning even in the darkest moments. One by one throughout the facility, the Vorthans began to scream, not from physical pain but from mental anguish, as their own psychological foundations crumbled. Security guards collapsed in corridors, technicians abandoned their posts, scientists fled their laboratories as human determination shattered their sense of reality. The screaming spread through the entire fleet like a plague carried by quantum communication links. Every Vorthan who heard about the singing humans experienced some level of psychological trauma. Their empire was built on the belief that power came from causing pain. Now they faced beings who transformed pain into song. Commander Zethkar dropped his torture devices and backed away from the human chambers. His forearms trembled as he watched the impossible sight of broken bodies that held unbroken spirits. The humans were still singing their quiet song of endurance, and their voices were the most terrifying sound he had ever heard. The screaming continued for hours, echoing through every ship in the Vorthan fleet. Aliens who had conquered dozens of worlds through intimidation and torture found their own minds shattered by exposure to human determination. The torture facility had to be completely evacuated as personnel suffered complete mental breakdowns. Dr. Ketmar. Emergency report to the Vorthan High Command was brief and filled with barely controlled panic. Human subjects do not break under interrogation. Instead, they cause interrogators to break. Recommend immediate cessation of all torture attempts and complete reconsideration of this campaign. The High Command received similar reports from every ship that held human prisoners. Engineer Park Min-soo had endured 6 days of continuous torture without revealing a single piece of technical information. Communications Officer Lee So-young had driven her interrogators to nervous exhaustion through sheer mental resilience. Every captured human showed the same impossible ability to resist torture that should have broken any living mind, but more than that, their resistance seemed to actively damage the psychology of their captors. Vorthan personnel who worked with human prisoners required extensive mental rehabilitation. Captain Kim Tae-ho and Dr. Choi Haijin were finally removed from their torture devices and placed in medical facilities. Their bodies were more dead than alive, but both remained conscious and alert as alien doctors worked to stabilize their failing organs. Both humans maintained the same quiet dignity that had defeated their captors. We should have died days ago, Haijin whispered to Tae-ho as medical scanners worked around them. Our bodies cannot sustain this level of damage, but we did not die, Tae-ho replied with a weak smile. We held on because our people needed us to hold on. Sometimes staying alive is the greatest victory of all. The other human prisoners were released within hours of the mass psychological breakdown. The Vorthan Empire, that had never shown mercy to any enemy, could not risk further exposure to human mental patterns. Their own sanity depended on getting these dangerous aliens as far away as possible. Emergency diplomatic channels opened. Between the Vorthen High Command and Earth, the humans were returned immediately aboard medical ships equipped with the best alien healing technology. The Empire offered reparations, technology transfers, and formal apologies for what they now realized had been a catastrophic mistake. As the human ships prepared to leave Vorthen Space Commander, Zethkar requested a final meeting with Captain Tejo. The alien commander looked broken, his confident arrogance replaced by something like fear. How, Zethkar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How did you resist? We have perfected these techniques over thousands of years. No mind should be able to endure what we did to you. Tejo looked at the alien with something that might have been pity. You made a mistake, he said quietly. You assumed that pain was the strongest force in the universe. But you never learned about love. Love, the alien repeated the word like it was a foreign concept. The love I have for my family, for my crew, for my entire species. Tejo explained that love is stronger than any pain you can imagine. It does not break under pressure, it grows stronger. When you torture someone you love, you do not break them, you forge them into something harder than steel. The human ships departed Vorthen space, carrying their rescued crews back to Earth, but the story of their endurance spread throughout the galaxy within weeks. The species that had stayed silent under torture had done something no other beings had ever accomplished. They had broken their captors without raising a hand in violence back. On Earth, Captain Tejo finally held his daughter Thejin in his arms while his wife, Jinna, cried tears of joy and relief. His body would take months to heal, but his spirit was stronger than ever. Daddy, Thejin asked as they sat in their garden watching flowers grow. Why did the aliens let you come home? Tejo smiled, remembering the sight of proud Vorthen warriors reduced to screaming wrecks by simple human determination sometimes. Little flower, he said, the most powerful thing you can do is stay quiet. When others expect you to break, that is when silence becomes stronger than any weapon. The Vorthen Empire still exists, but they no longer use torture. The memory of their own people screaming in psychological agony taught them lessons their victims never could. In the end, it was not the humans who broke under pressure. It was their captors who shattered against the quiet strength of human. Will the galaxy learn that day that some things cannot be broken, only tested, and humanity, forged in the fires of countless hardships, had passed the ultimate test simply by refusing to scream.